Now we're live.
All right, this is Brave New History. I'm Elliot. My my library. There we go. Because I want to make sure people know that this is a real library behind me. Get my camera just right. So we're here with Nathan from Spiritual Level of Being, and just wrote a book. And of course, it's hard to get a hold of because the first run sold out pretty quickly. And so we're talking about Gnosticism through the ages.
Yeah, Gnosis through the ages.
No, I was close. Gnosis
There
through
we
the
go.
ages. Yeah.
So everyone can see it. That's the back end as well.
Yeah, brilliant. How long did it take you to write it?
Be honest, it took me about a year to put everything together because I started off with pen and paper, and from there I went through, fixed up the spelling issues, make sure all full stops were correct, and all this sort of stuff. But also, when I first wrote it, I had to go back and start putting references where I found particular knowledge and stuff, so that way other people could find it as well. As this book's a little bit of a guide as well to help others with their research and the finding into Gnosticism and ancient history and references, so they can find it for themselves, not just blindly follow words in a book. No?
Yeah, that's kind of tracing Gnostic thought and where it begins, and kind of what people, when people read scripture, how they could interpret it as Gnostic, right?
Yes.
And one thing that, just as maybe more of a tangent, that I remember reading, I think it's in John, the Gospel of John, they said no one has ever seen God, right? Which is a weird thing to say because, like, in the Old Testament, like, the Lord is in the garden, right? And who was it saw the back of God in the Old Testament? But you could take that as, like, that wasn't really God. No one has seen God. So if this guy was seen, it's not him, right?
That
And
almost is the idea of the unknowable God with Gnosticism.
Yeah, exactly. And false gods, right? People that are fallen angels that think they're God, right? But they're not.
Also
So
archons.
that's yeah. And so yeah, what would you say, like, the first hint of Gnosticism is, or Gnostic thought?
The divine spark within us all, the God within, that connection goes right back into ancient Judaism. Also, the idea of God as everything and nothingness, which is also found in the Kabbalah. So, reference to God, all life itself, God within all life itself. That would be the earliest reference of it. So, the idea of spiritual knowledge.
Yeah, and I almost wonder if knowledge versus faith, right? So people will say, I know God exists, or I know the Bible is true. And it's almost synonymous with I have faith in God and I have faith that the Bible is true. But knowledge is a little bit more certain, right? So it's the whole, well, if something is going to be salvific, you would think it would be gnosis rather than faith, right?
100%.
And I wonder if that's not what the Gnostic fathers, if that was their take on it.
Absolutely. It was definitely for the idea of seeking spiritual knowledge, to understand the mysteries and mathematics behind it all, etc.
Yeah. And if you could take us through your book on kind of what's it about and what you go into with it.
Yeah, well, with this book, because there's a lot of things in the Nag Hammadi library, and all their writings are meant to be taken symbolically, not literally. So that's the meaning of secret meanings. Not everyone's able to understand the meanings, but one meaning of sign can also mean multiple different meanings. So I'm not saying that this book has all of it, but it has the deeper essence of the Gnostic thought and philosophy. So it explains not just the symbolism behind the Nag Hammadi text, it also explains the ancient Gnostic symbols. I can show a couple of symbols that are in here too. It explains. It goes into the circumpunct, the monad, the infinity symbol as well. I also go into the Abora symbol. Whoops, camera. The Yalda Bayoff symbol. There's also the Kabbalah it goes into as well with the level of being, day-to-day tips you can use in your life and spiritual practices, and also the psychological effects of such spiritual practices and how you can use it psychological, like to improve your own life. So everything's within the mind, basically. So it also goes into the symbolic meanings behind the mother, the father God, and Christ itself and all this sort of stuff, etc. So it's really also a guide to help others seek the answers for themselves. So it gives references where you can find such knowledge, and also stuff that can help you, say, flush out your system. All this sort of stuff is in this little book.
Yeah, brilliant. So what's your take on the symbols, like the point within a circle, the quartered circle? What do those mean?
Well, the circumpunct, that's one of the oldest symbols on Earth. We can find it in old cave paintings, etc., like this, and old art, especially when religion was starting to rise. The Greeks even spoke about it being the monad, being the divine mind. So that again goes into Gnosticism. So the idea of God being all life itself, being an old tradition. Then it goes into with the life being eternal. So the infinity symbol matches up with all this as well. So the eternal mind, so life never ending, so life being eternal and reincarnation. So our earlier ancestors just seen this whole process of reincarnation as just expanse, so an answer to life and death, and also birth, as birth was also seen as sacred and so was death. So it was like a afterlife that they perceived that might not be forever. So you might be reincarnating, or you might be returning to the source, which is also the monad symbol. Later on, it would be used in the early Americas as meaning God, glory, and gold. So that's also pretty interesting. But that's not the original meaning. The original meaning was obviously like eternal mind.
Yeah,
mind.
So it's a symbol for the monad. And also, I think, in alchemy, it means both gold and the sun.
Yes. So union. And the masculine and the femme, so the sun and the moon as well.
Yeah.
But obviously it means single mind as well, which I find very interesting, because you got this idea of single mind of God. But this also means that you're a single mind. So meaning that us as multiple minds make up the cosmic mind of God. Not all Gnostics held this belief, but there were many different forms of Gnosticism.
Yeah. And you also had the Yaldabaoth symbol. Yep. That's a mysterious one. What do you think is going on with that?
Well, a lot of it is also the idea of mocking the Old Testament God. If you look at the different shapes he takes, sometimes he has a head of a lion, sometimes he's a dragon, etc. So they're pointing this out, saying this is not a god at all. This is a scary being, and they're mocking it, basically.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's what I explain in this book.
Did you come to that idea on your own, or did you read it somewhere? That's the first I've heard of that.
That one, I come to my own conclusion, I believe. I've seen other references before, but then that's with the idea of the dragon. But then I've seen in the Bible that it also mentioned God having the head of a lion. So I was like, this is why. Then you got ideas of God having wings, breathing out smoke, etc. So you have the idea of Adam and Eve being afraid of him in the Garden of Eden. So this idea of seeing this God isn't a real God at all, because the Gnostics seen God as unknowable, only knowable through you, which is essentially your divine spark or soul.
Yeah. And on that idea, we also have like the Basilidian idea of Abraxas, right? So he's like a rooster-headed god, and he's supposed to be the father, like the ultimate god, right? And then
I also explained the Abraxas symbol too as well in the book.
Yeah, what's your take on that?
Well, if you notice the shape of Abraxas, sometimes it's a rooster head, sometimes it's a dove, sometimes it's a hawk. I've seen you mention this in your previous videos as well. And with this, if you look at all the shapes, the shape of the animal, shape of human, this meaning God, all life itself. So all of us together, collectively making up Abraxas, the Barbello, the cosmic mind of the Mother Father. And then you have the idea of the Fool of Sophia, the creation of this earth by this evil creator God. This is symbolic to be taken our separation from self, forgetting who we are, the separation from our inner God, society, and nature. So the Abraxas symbol is the unification.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Also
makes
magic.
Yeah. And so where does Sophia and Barbello come into it?
Well, Sophia is the feminine side of it, wisdom. So if you look at the shape of man, well, the man shape in the Barbello symbol. Well, if you look at the word man, it originally meant mankind. So both sexes. So that idea of the mother-father. So God was, well, we're in God's image. So both masculine and feminine, male or female. So you have this idea of God being both, of beyond sex. So this goes into the idea of Abraxas.
Gotcha. Incorporating opposites and whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've mentioned this before on my channel. It's interesting how each part of it, like the Abraxas symbol, can be there within the New Testament. Well, specifically the Gospels, you can kind of create the Abraxas character, right? Like, so Christ says, "I'm like a hen," right? Gathering everybody together, gathering the chicks together, right? And then we have like the rooster crowing before Peter denies him 3 times, right? So we see the rooster symbol, and then the cleansing of the temple, that's the human with the whip, right? And then the serpent, the brazen serpent in the wilderness that must be raised up, right? That's the serpent. And then if you believe that the serpent in the garden was Christ, as some of the Gnostics did, you can kind of see that, right? And then you have the construction of Abraxas, who is supposed to be the father, but, you know, from the New Testament, if you've seen Christ, you've seen the Father, right? So they're similar enough that they're, if you've seen one, you've seen the other. That's my take on it, personally.
Yes. Also, the serpents represent knowledge as well.
Yes. Yeah, and one other interesting thing is that Basilides equates Abraxas with Mithras as the same deal, right? And Mithras is said to be a Persian deity, although he really wasn't. He was just kind of almost made up whole cloth by the Greeks, right, within Mithraism, or the Romans, like that area, Roman Mithraism. But the rooster was sometimes referred to in Greece as the Persian bird, right? So you kind of see that Persian element common to both, right? So you wonder if that might be a reference to supposed Persian origins.
Definitely, because Gnosticism was a unification of all thoughts, basically, an idea of collectively bringing everything together. And also the idea of the rooster can also be taken with the hawk. So this Abraxas symbol was used by all Gnostics, so it was universal. So the idea of Jesus even being a hawk in the garden, some referred to him as the serpent. So all Gnostics read each other's writings, so this symbol was still universal to all Gnostics, despite their ideologies, beliefs, or practices.
Yeah. Yeah, and along those lines, Basilides being Egyptian, you'd wonder if there's not an association with Thoth, right? Or something along those lines, because, well, I mean, you can draw parallels between Christ and just about any figure, but you could draw parallels with Thoth.
Yes,
but, so you wonder if that's not the intent.
Yes, and also with the masculine and feminine, so Christ being universal, you have the goddess of wisdom, then you have Thoth being the god of wisdom, Hermes, etc. So wisdom being both masculine and feminine traits, which is pretty interesting as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've got symbolism, and what's your favorite Gnostic symbol?
I love the monad, but I also love the Kabbalah. I don't really have a particular favorite. I have multiple favorites. So I have the
Yeah,
monad, the Kabbalah, and I also love the cross because I know what it represents, level of being. Also goes in with the Kabbalah, but the cross is also universal. So you have the anchor, etc. So you have many forms of it, which is pretty
yeah.
interesting as well.
So the anchor is a form of what?
Sorry, what was that bit? Looks like we got a bit of a stall. Cut it out. Sorry about that, Elliot.
Yeah, what was that? Yeah, you kind of went out for a bit.
Yeah, I was trying to see what you just said. My bad.
Oh, yeah, the anchor was a form of what?
Oh, it's also the same sort of thing, level of being, but also it represents the masculine and feminine. So the idea of the cross being an older idea. So if you look at it, not just carrying a hunk of wood around, take it as level of being. So you're carrying your level of being, your mind. So you're either descending or ascending, or you're stuck in the middle and eventually go down to a downward spiral, or unless you wake up and ascend. So the past and future is also associated with this.
Gotcha. So, yeah, the anchor was an early Christian symbol, right? That
Yes.
we don't really have it anymore. So you wonder what was meant by that, because I mean I can't find really hardly any references to anchor in the New Testament. So you wonder what was going
They
on.
want to remove it because of it represented both the masculine and femme. Anything that really represented a femme, they really persecuted to try and remove. And this was even rooted in with ancient Judaism with the removal of Asherah. So anything feminine, they want to really remove, make it more male dominated.
Yeah. And explain again how it's a symbol of masculinity and femininity.
Well, that was also something I've looked up as well. You can look it up on descriptions on Google and stuff like that, and through books. I forgot the exact sort of story, but it represents life, and death as well, and rebirth. So it goes into the ideas of the gods and stuff of ancient Egypt. But I particularly forgot about the masculine and femme. I should have took some notes. I don't know if I have it in here. I might even have it in the book. I think I might just explain the Gnostic side of it, to be honest, and the level of being. But yeah, no, it's just the level of being side and stuff I explain on this, I believe. I'd have to find it for you. But yeah, if you can look it up on Google, you can find the meaning of why it's associated with masculine and femme. I believe it's something to do with Isis and her partner. Forgot the name. Terrible forgetting stuff.
Yeah, Osiris.
That's the one. So I'm pretty sure it has something to do with both of them, and that's the reason that's associated with the masculine and the femme. As both of these gods are also symbolized in Gnosticism with the Mother, Father, God. Even the idea of Druids has been the Druids' knowledge has been passed on in Gnosticism as well. And some believe that even the root of Abraxas comes from the Druids, which is also interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, I've not heard that. Do you know what the speculation is on that?
Not 100%. Theories more likely. But with the idea of gods in ancient Druidism, they seen it as their ancestors. So, meaning all of us. So, they would send prayers to their ancestors that they believe would watch them, guide their lives, either curse them or give them blessings. So, the idea of nature being God as well was also found in with Druidism nature worship. So, this whole idea of God being universal, unknowable, no dogma, etc. All this sort of stuff was passed on as well. That's why the Gnostics read each other's writings. So they were more universal in a sense. They didn't persecute. The only Gnostic group I ever found that would go to war, and they fought both the Muslims and the Crusaders and even helped Muslims against the Crusaders, was Paulinianism, which was an interesting group. I actually was quite surprised when I found them.
Yeah.
But some historians argue that they're more likely the early beginnings of Protestantism. So the Protestants.
Yeah. Yeah, I've not heard of them before. Yeah, and then yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying they're a very different group. They're kind of like, if honestly, people just associate with them with a mixture of Gnosticism and Protestantism, but I also seen them more of a mixture of Gnosticism and Catholicism, as the idea they would go to armed pilgrimages, which the Catholic Church also encouraged. but they're a very, very different group.
Sure.
I explained them on one of my videos as well on my channel.
Yeah, everybody will have to check it out. Spiritual Level of Being, and you also have a Facebook group too, where you
same name,
have a community. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyone can go on there. They can post what they like. I only remove tarot card readings and spam, obviously, but everything else I allow to remain. You're welcome to post whatever you like on there as well, Elliot, of course.
Yep. Thank you. I think I may have posted a few times. I'd have to look.
Yeah, I believe you have, just not for a while.
Yeah. And then, so you mentioned the symbol of Kabbalah. Are we talking about the Tree of Life?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I go into both sides. So
yeah,
a lot of
that's
people don't
a
realize
tricky
they
one.
just see Kabbalah as one symbol. It's actually different dimensions. So you've got the lower and you've got the higher. So I go into that in my book as well, into the Kabbalah meanings and its roots in Judaism as well. Oops. There we go. So I've got both sides. There's a lower one just there underneath, and then you've got the higher one. Then you've got the idea of this up here being Sophia, the Godhead, and cosmic mind of the Mother, Father, God, basically. So that's more of a Gnostic side of it. But it goes into your level of being, your tree of life, your emotions, the masculine and the femme, which is associated with language, in our prayers, rituals, all that sort of stuff. And also it talks about how Jesus and John also were taught and learnt and practiced and even spoke about the Kabbalah and some of their teachings and parables, etc., like that. But yeah, ultimately the Kabbalah is to do with your level of being. So you're either lower or you're higher. It goes into your dreams as well. So bad dreams, good dreams, duality.
Yeah. Yeah. So is the Kabbalah or the Tree of Life? Is it like a ladder? What do you describe it as?
Yeah, basically. Also, kind of like it's like chakras and the zodiac. So it goes into the planets. There's also a lot of mathematics and philosophy behind the Kabbalah. It's a never-ending learning subject. You could read one book about it, but you'd have to read 10 more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the Kabbalah is something that I'm not too terribly familiar with, right? I know it's pretty complicated
with the names.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure of all the names, but I understand its meanings. And when I was learning about it, I got told from the person that was teaching me, he said, look, it doesn't matter if you don't remember every name. All that matters is if you know the meaning behind it, basically. So it's symbolism.
Yeah.
So don't feel too bad if you don't remember all the names.
What's that?
So don't feel too bad if you don't remember all the names, because I don't.
Yeah, very true. All right. And maybe we'll end on, unless there's something that we didn't talk about that you're looking to talk about. But what were the it comes with life tips too, and bringing Gnosticism into your life?
Pretty much. It also goes into the symbolism, basically, of, well, it's not symbolism, well, yeah, symbolism, of taking things psychologically. So the idea of prayers, using that into your mind to boost your confidence. The idea of drilling something to your head over and over again makes your reality, basically, to change thoughts around from negative into positive, to find gratitude. I also go into about water blessing, so old Christian rituals, this sort of stuff.
Yeah, water blessing. Yeah. That's something along the lines of baptism, or like, what is that?
Basically, as well, it was an old practice, but it's the idea of plants. They grow. You speak to them. Vibrations. Well, frequency also has an effect on water. So there's a subject, it's up for debate, that certain prayers would purify the water. So in a sense, you take this psychologically, you're praying to a word of wishing it well, love, you're drinking the water. You're absorbing that purity, basically. But you're also taking the psychology, so you're taking it to your mind to make you feel good, you know?
Yeah.
So I go into that, which a lot of people with spiritual practices don't go into. They don't talk about the psychological effects, where I do.
Yeah.
So I find that much more useful because you're able to enact it into your day-to-day life. So it's able to do something. So you're able to give it much more meaning.
Yeah. Yeah, which you could almost think that's what the ancient Gnostics intended, right?
Yes.
That just like
I've
they
also got a
say
picture
that.
I showed up as well about the water
Oh
blessing.
yeah. That's from What the Bleep Do We Know, right? Have you seen that?
Not too sure. I've more just read it, to be honest. So I was just reading into it
Okay.
from books and yeah.
Yeah. There's this documentary. You'd probably like it.
Actually, I think I
What
did
the?
see the documentary.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting.
Hmm.
Um, all right. Yeah. Do you think we pretty much covered everything?
I believe so. If you want, I can read the introduction for the book. So
Yeah.
if anyone's interested in that,
Perfect. Yeah, and then so the first round sold out, and
yeah,
then see the second one is going to be available on eBay.
yeah, it's already available on eBay. I've got 8 on there at the moment. I've got 2 of them sold. I was going to have 10 on there, but 2 of them sold, so I've got 8 on there so far. And 10% of the profits go to the charity as well. I take it specifically to the Adelaide Homeless Shelter. I've redone the donation. I gave them a box full of fruit, so they got a kilo of bananas, a kilo of apples, a kilo and a half of oranges, and they got half a watermelon. So, bit of a bonus.
Yeah.
So next donation, because it's more books, the donation will be bigger. As the orders increase, the donations will increase.
Yeah.
So it's my ultimate goal. But yeah, I have the introduction here. Would you like me to read it?
Yeah.
No worries. Introduction is, before you read this book, some information presented to you will either be amazing or shocking. This book is for those looking to discover the mysteries of Gnosis, i.e., spiritual esoteric knowledge. Though I do not claim this little book will have all the answers, or this is the only path to enlightenment, as there are many. However, this book will inspire you to search further, and you will be able to make much more sense of the esoteric mysteries and knowledge of the Gnostics. A head start, if you will, for the many initiates and even adept students that seek this secret knowledge. Gnosticism can be a complicated subject to understand due to the many forms of gnosis and the misrepresentations from their opponents and New Age beliefs. This book is aimed at giving the reader the wisdom and knowledge they can use in their day-to-day lives, along with the hidden and suppressed history of the Gnostics, the first Christians. That's my introduction for those 3 ages.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. All right. And then any final thoughts that you'd like to say before we head out here?
I just wish everyone lots of love, lots of blessings, and lots of knowledge, and many miracles, of course. Hope their dreams come true.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Thanks for coming on. And I'll have to check out your book. And yeah, lots of love, everybody. And thank you for watching.
Peace and love, Elliot.